As somebody who lives in the Appalachian Mountains, I've gone camping here quite a few times, and I've never encountered something quite as horrifying as what's in tonight's story. So, with that being said, grab your favorite tea and settle in, and let me tell you another scary Appalachia story, because of course, this is Tea After Midnight. This story comes from Anonymous. Hey Savannah, I've been really enjoying your Tea After Midnight stories lately, especially the ones about the Appalachian Mountains, because I live here too. Here is my scary Appalachian story if you would like to tell it on your page. I had just turned 18 and my mom and dad thought it would be a great idea for my family to go camping to celebrate mine and my younger brother's birthday. His birthday was just a few days after mine. My whole family really enjoys nature, so I was really excited to go. It was fall break this week, so my dad had planned for us to stay the entire week at a campground in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains. We got to the spot and started setting up our area. It took us a while to set up the 2 tents and everything else that we had. One tent for my parents and younger siblings, and the other for my older brother, myself, and my younger brother. After we set everything up, we got ready to cook dinner and just hang out before bed. My older brother, myself, and my younger brother wanted to go on a walk before dinner, so we told our parents we would be back in a little while. My older brother was 19, I was 18, and my younger brother was 16 at the time, so my parents didn't have an issue with us going by ourselves. There was a 1-lane road leading around the entire campground, so we decided to follow this road and circle back around. It only takes about 30 to 45 minutes to walk the entire road to get back to where you started. As we were walking, we kept noticing that there were no cars or tents anywhere on the other campsites, which was very odd seeing that it was fall break, and every other time we had gone there on fall break, it was so packed you could barely find a spot to camp. Not really paying attention to it, we kept walking and just goofing off like we normally do. I noticed my older brother kept peering off into the woods around us, looking nervous and not saying much. I nudged him in the side with my elbow and said, "You're not scared, are you?" He looked at me and said, "No, I just have a feeling we're not alone." That instantly gave me chills because of all the horror stories we had heard growing up about the Appalachian Mountains. I looked over at my younger brother, and he didn't seem bothered by what my older brother said. We kept walking, and now I really started to pay attention to the woods and other campsites. It looked like a ghost town. No other cars or people, just silence. We were more than halfway done with the walk at this point, and it was starting to get really dark. None of us had brought a flashlight, so we started to pick up the pace to get back to our campsite. As we kept walking, we stopped dead in our tracks. Right in front of us on this road, there was what looked to be a person standing in the middle of the road. My older brother put his arm out in front of us to hold us back from walking any closer to them. He called out to the stranger and said, "Hey, do you have a campsite around here?" The person just stood there staring at us. They didn't answer him. My brother said, "We need to turn around and head back." But before we could turn around, the person started to sprint toward us in a very aggressive manner. My brother grabbed our hands and started bolting back towards the camp the way we came. I was trying to keep up with how fast he was running, but I kept hearing the person getting closer to us, and it was making me panic. I told my brother that the person was catching up, and my brother took mine and my younger brother's hand and dragged us into the woods to try to lose the person who was chasing us. As soon as we made it into the woods a little bit, I turned to look behind us to see if the person was following us, but they weren't. We stood behind a big tree for a few minutes to catch our breath. It was completely dark outside now, and the only light we had was coming from the moon. I had never been more terrified than I was in that moment. My older brother said, "I think they're gone, but we need to get back to camp now." We slowly walked back to the road and looked around us to see if we saw the person, but we didn't. We tried walking as quickly and as quietly as we possibly could down the road when we see headlights. My dad was pulling up to come find us because he was worried we had gotten lost. We all were so relieved to see him. We jumped in and told him how we saw this person standing in the road and that they just started to sprint at us and that the person looked very angry, so we had to bolt into the woods to lose them. Dad chalked it up to someone pulling a prank and that they were probably just trying to spook us. We had finally gotten back to camp and my brothers and I decided we were going to head to sleep. We didn't eat dinner or stay up and hang out. We just went right to bed because we were so freaked out. It took a while, but I finally fell asleep. At some point in the middle of the night, I woke up to tapping on my back. It was my younger brother. I roll over to see what's going on, and I didn't see my older brother in the tent. It was just me and my younger brother, so I asked him where our brother went, and he said that he had heard something, so we went outside the tent to check it out and go get Dad. I told my brother to stay put, and I stepped out of the tent and called for my brother, but he didn't answer. My mom was outside of her tent and said that Dad had went to go find my brother because he came into their tent and told them that he heard a noise. But when my dad got up to check, my brother was gone. I asked my mom how long he had been gone, and she said about 10 minutes. We sat at the picnic table for about 5 minutes when we heard a blood-curdling scream. It didn't sound like it was human. I froze and looked at my mom, and she looked as petrified as I did. This scream didn't sound right. It sounded like what I can only describe as the most evil-sounding scream I had ever heard. That's when I see my dad and brother come running out of the woods while my dad is yelling for us to grab our things and get in the truck. We grabbed what we needed and left everything else. My dad sped all the way out of that campground as my older brother was sitting in the back with this look of disbelief and terror on his face. I asked him what happened out there, and he kept repeating, "I don't want to talk about it," and "just drop it." The next day when we were back at our house, I went into his room to talk to him about it, and what he told me still makes me shiver. He said that he kept hearing something walking around our tents, and it kept making this awful groaning noise. After a few minutes it had stopped. He said he ran to Dad's tent to go get him so they could check it out, and as he was telling Dad to come help him to check, he heard something behind him running away. When he turned to look behind him, he could see the person we encountered earlier on the road. My brother said that he ran after him because he didn't think it was funny to be coming over there to our camp trying to mess with us. So we ran after them to try to find out why they were doing this. My brother said he followed them into the woods a good ways when he saw the person on their knees hovering over what looked like a dead deer with its belly ripped open. My brother said this person was ripping the insides of the deer out from its carcass and eating it. And when he saw what they were doing, he gasped, and the person turned his head towards my brother. My brother said that he had yellow, glowing eyes and was covered in blood. That's when the thing screamed. My dad showed up right as my brother saw the yellow eyes and grabbed my brother's hand, and they both ran back to camp. My dad told me later that day that he saw it too when he showed up to grab my brother, and that the person that was eating the deer definitely did have yellow eyes, and that it definitely wasn't human. I'm not sure what that thing was, but I'm so glad we all made it out of there safely. I am 42 now, and I have never been camping ever again after that. My brother and Dad were never really the same after what they saw. I still have many questions about that camping trip. Why were there no other people at that campground? Who or what was the person or thing that was eating the dead deer? And why was it walking around our tents, groaning in the middle of the night? So I don't know about you, but this story definitely gave me goosebumps. I also would like to know what you guys encountered because that is absolutely terrifying. Not only are they standing in the middle of the road, not answering your questions, but then to sprint towards you and you have to lose them in the woods, that's terrifying. But then to find out later that your brother heard the thing walking around the tent groaning in the middle of the night, it woke him up, so he goes to get your dad. Your dad comes out there, your brother's sprinting off into the woods, but when he shows up, he sees the same thing your brother did. Let's talk about that. So when your brother shows up and finds this person, it's hovering over a dead deer, and it is eating the insides out of the carcass of this dead deer. That is absolutely vile. So if anybody watching this video knows what they encountered, please let us know because that is absolutely disgusting. I just want to say thank you so much for sending in your story. I am so sorry that you guys went through that, and I'm so happy that y'all are safe. That is absolutely horrifying. I couldn't imagine going through that, and I definitely won't be camping after I heard this story. But that does conclude this episode of Tea After Midnight. If you have any personal scary stories you want to share, I would love to read them. You can email me at the email on the screen or the email in the caption of this video. As always, you guys, thank you so much for being here. I love y'all so much. I hope you have the best night, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
I'm originally from Vermont, and there are just some stories that we have that we don't necessarily tell tourists. And it's not because we don't think that they're gonna believe us, but it's more of like a service to you, because the more we talk about these things, the more likely it is that somebody out there is gonna go seek it out. So my uncle used to hunt outside of Northfield a couple years ago, or by this point it's like almost over 10 years ago. But he, as well as a lot of my other family members, were the real outdoorsman type of people. You know, he was the type of person that had like that shack in his backyard where he would butcher his animals, you know, take their pelts off and stuff like that. He would sell his stuff. A lot of us from the country have an uncle or two that would, you know, be walking on a trail with you and pick up scat and be like, oh, this animal was nearby, like the guy in year one. Think of that scene in year one. That, like, everybody in Vermont has an uncle like that guy. Needless to say, this guy did not scare very easily. So this is a story that happened to him that he would tell constantly. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I've heard this story around a campfire or just like around the dinner table. So one day in November, that was very clear. Every time he starts the story, one evening in November, like so dramatic. So one November day, he and his friend Mark ventured out further into the woods than they normally would to go hunting. It had been one of those like cold, quiet Vermont days, rainy, wet, that it just like makes the woods feel quieter than normal. It was a very eerie day for them. The birds were not chirping. There was no sound to the woods except their own feet and their minds twirling. Whatever, the whole entire day goes by. They don't end up getting anything on their hunt. It was a lousy day for them. The sunset rolls around and Mark looks over to my uncle and he's like, yo, maybe we should like, you know, head out before it gets too dark. My uncle agreed, because if you know anything about the woods, you know that they change at night in a very scary kind of way. Like, it just feels unnatural to be in the pitch blackness like that. I don't know. They start heading back to the truck and everything is pretty normal. It was only about a half-mile walk back to their truck, so it was nothing like too difficult from where they were, you know what I mean? So they're walking, and then all of a sudden Mark just stops dead on the trail and goes silent. And in the darkness, my uncle almost ran into Mark because he stopped like dead center in the trail, like he heard something. So my uncle was like, what do you hear? What's going on? What's wrong? Mark is like, did you hear that? And so my uncle stops and listens with him. And at first there was nothing that he could hear, but after waiting a couple more seconds, he started to hear the sound of deliberate footsteps walking through the woods. It was like heavy footsteps. The footsteps were way too heavy to be a deer and absolutely way too steady to be a bear. My uncle, being whatever kind of grizzly man he is, he calls out into the woods, hello? I almost feel like that's first rule of the woods, like, shut the fuck up. But anyways, he got no response, so they stop and they listen again, and at first they hear, again, nothing but silence. So they just continue walking. They're like, okay, we gotta get the fuck back to the truck. But then they start hearing something walk parallel to them, keeping pace with them. Like, it wasn't scared, it wasn't trying to run away from them, it was like somebody was walking next to them on the trail, but like off in the darkness to where they couldn't see them. At least that's what it felt like to them at the time, because they couldn't see anything. Mark looks over to my uncle and he's like, yo, we need to like keep going. So they were like, my uncle was like, yeah, okay. And then they kept going a little faster. They didn't start off running or anything, because if you're in the woods, like, you don't want to run unless you absolutely have to, especially in the dark. And there are some things in the woods that you just don't want to run from. But as they're speed walking down the trail, they hear a noise literally parallel to them that sounded like a pig. Well, Mark says that it sounded like a pig, but my uncle says that it sounded like a human who was trying to sound like a pig. They both agreed on one thing, and that one thing was that it sounded very wrong, and it was not anything that they had ever heard before out in the forest. So then everything goes completely silent again. They don't hear the footsteps of the thing next to them. They don't hear their own footsteps because they've stopped in their tracks. With not hearing anything, they're like, okay, we need to get back to the truck ASAP. Like, it can't be far now. Maybe about another 5 minutes if we walk really fast, right? So they get like super close to the truck. They know that they're almost there. They recognize this part of the trail as being like the end of the trail. And all of a sudden, Mark grabs my uncle's jacket, almost pulling him back onto the ground. So as Mark was pulling him back, he was like, don't move. And he like weirdly pointed to something in front of the trail, or in front of him on the trail. About 40 yards ahead, there was something standing at the edge of the trail. It was too dark to make out any very intricate details about the thing, but it was very big. My uncle thought that it was a bear at first. That is, until the thing started moving, because bears don't stand up the way that that thing stood up. And bears certainly don't stay standing the way that this thing stood. This thing slowly shifted and stood higher and higher and higher, bro. This thing was so tall. My uncle said that he never saw the face clearly, but he saw its size and how bulky and muscular it was. It had super, super wide shoulders, and its eyes would glow in the dark, but they were like too wide set, like more wide set than anything that he had ever seen before. And way higher off the ground than he had ever seen any animal's eyes be. Like I told you, he is an outdoorsman. He's always outside. He's always hunting. He knows the land and he knows these things. He had never seen any animal that big. Mark didn't wait a second. He grabbed my uncle and started running down the trail, which my uncle then realized, okay, he snapped back into it and he started running with Mark. They're smashing through the trees, smashing through the branches, and they finally reach the truck and they're clicking the key button. They're clicking the key button, trying to unlock the truck. They get into the truck and they start driving away. They made it away from whatever this was in the woods. They're driving silently back home, right? Until Mark breaks the silence and he asks my uncle, did you hear breathing when we were running? And my uncle was like, yo, you heard it too? Years later, somebody told my uncle about an old local story about something people called the pig man. Sort of like a half warning, half folklore kind of tale. Regardless, my uncle never hunted that area ever again. Whether you want to believe the story or not, I do, because I've seen things and I've heard things out in the forest that is just unexplainable.
I won't tell you my name, and I won't tell you who I murdered, because if I do, you'll know. You'll remember the story. You'll remember the headlines. You'll know who I am, and I don't want that. Because if you know who I am, you'll assume you know the story, and I want you to hear this without knowing and without assumption. I've changed the names of everyone in the story because the thing is, this story is real. It's not made up. It's not a script. Every single word of this actually happened. So here goes. I sat on the lower bunk in my cell and watched the guard make his rounds. Can't sleep again? Officer Daniel Reeves asked. You ask me that every night, I responded. Daniel smiled and stopped outside the bars. He was one of the few guards who treated the inmates like people. That happened less than you'd think. I trusted him more than I trusted my lawyer. You'll get through the appeal, he said. You don't seem like the type to stab anyone. He smiled a wonky smile that always made my heart sore. Juries don't care what type you seem, I said, swallowing down a sob. Every time anyone was nice to me, it made me want to cry. Daniel leaned against the bars. You still saying that you didn't kill her? I didn't. He looked at me for a moment and nodded. Good night, Mara. He walked away. I lay down but didn't sleep. I'd spent 4 years in prison for the murder of Evelyn. Evelyn had been found dead in her apartment. My fingerprints were on the weapon and witnesses saw us argue that very same night. The court called it open and shut. Life without parole. My first appeal was coming around, but I had little hope. People like me didn't make it out of prison. 2:13 a.m. that night was the first time I heard footsteps inside my cell. I didn't open my eyes at first. Straight away I thought, maybe it's Daniel. Had he stuck inside my cell to, well, you know. I thought I heard the footsteps get closer and my heart started to beat faster. It must be him. Who else could it be? I finally opened my eyes and saw eyes staring straight back at me, a mere few centimetres away. Wide, pale eyes with hair dangling all over the face. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I screamed and leapt out of bed. The face had disappeared. Mara, a voice whispered. I turned around and saw her. Pale skin, dark wet hair, blood soaking the front of a white shirt standing next to the sink in the shadows. I stopped breathing. No, I whispered. The woman looked at me with dull, grey eyes. It was Evelyn. I pressed myself against the wall. You're dead. Evelyn tilted her head. Yeah, thanks to you. I screamed for the guards, but by the time they arrived, the cell was empty. Daniel rushed in first. What happened? She was here, I said. Evelyn was standing right there. The other guards laughed, but Daniel didn't. He crouched beside my bunk. Did you dream it? I was awake. But you've been under stress, and she spoke to me. Daniel looked unsettled for the first time since I'd known him. What did she say? Nothing important. That was a lie. The sightings continued. Every few nights, Evelyn appeared somewhere in the prison. At the end of the corridor, inside the laundry room, standing behind inmates during meal service. Nobody else ever saw her. But I heard her voice constantly. You left me there. You saw him. Why won't you remember? I began losing sleep. I stopped eating. Other inmates avoided me. I looked like I'd lost the biscuit. Only Daniel stayed close. One night he bought me coffee during his shift. You look terrible, he said. Thanks. You should tell the prison doctor about the visions. They're not visions. Daniel lowered his voice. Then maybe she wants something. I stared at him. You believe me? He hesitated. My mother believed in ghosts. That's not an answer. I think guilt does really strange things to people. I slammed the cup on the table. I didn't kill her. The room went quiet. Daniel held up his hands. I didn't say that you did. But he never said that he believed that I was innocent. A few nights later, Evelyn came back. I saw her out of the corner of my eye. She was on the other side of the cell, clinging at the bars, eyes wide and sad. Mara, here's your supper. Daniel's voice made me jump. Some kind of lumpy casserole, I don't know for you. He unlocked the cell door and walked in holding the tray. I didn't say a word. He put the tray down, walked out of the cell and locked the door. Mara, you okay? Evelyn was stood right behind him, and seeing them both together, I remembered. The next morning I asked Daniel a question during breakfast duty. How long have you been a corrections officer? About 8 years. And where did you work before this? Why? Just asking. Daniel shrugged. Hospital security, night shifts mostly. I nodded slowly. That night I couldn't stop thinking. Hospital security. Evelyn had worked nights at St. Jude's Medical Centre before her death. We'd been roommates, friends. She'd been stabbed 75 times, and because I'd lived with her, I'd gotten the blame. All evidence pointed at me. My DNA was everywhere, but then it would be. I lived there. But of course I didn't kill her. Someone had, though. A cold feeling spread through my stomach. I looked up and Evelyn stood at the foot of my bunk. You saw his face, she said to me. I would remember, I said. You were drunk. And the memory hit me hard. Rain outside Evelyn's apartment, a fight we'd had about absolutely nothing, me leaving the building angry, someone brushing past me on the stairs, a man in a dark jacket and a familiar voice saying, Evening. The next day, I watched him closely. His smile, his calm voice, the way he always avoided details about talking about the murder. That evening, I confronted him. You knew Evelyn before she died. Daniel stared at me. Where'd you hear that? She worked at St. Jude's. So? You work security there? Daniel looked away for 1 second too long. That was years ago, he said. I felt my hands shake. She was seeing someone, I said slowly. The prosecutor said that they never identified him. Daniel gave a tired smile. Mara, stop. She was seeing you. The smile disappeared. You should go back to your cell now. You killed her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Daniel sighed. You know what your problem is? He asked quietly. You always notice things a little bit too late. I stepped backward. Daniel locked the visitation room door. She wanted to leave, he said. Said she was going to tell my wife everything. Said that she was done hiding. I felt sick. I went there to talk, that's all. My chest tightened. You framed me. You framed yourself, Daniel shrugged. I just helped. It was really easy to pin it on you. You're a bit of a nut job, do you know that?
Oh, he's just despicable.
I moved toward the door. Daniel grabbed my arm. No one's going to believe you. No one. If you say anything, they'll throw you into somewhere far worse than this, let me tell you. I make it nice for you here. That's why I work here. Just to overcome the guilt. I bring you extra rolls, extra dessert. I keep giving you little treats too. We can rub along quite nicely here, you and I. Daniel walked out of the cell door, locked it, his eyes on mine, and walked away. That was a few months ago now, and I'm still here. I haven't figured out a way of getting my revenge on Daniel, and I don't think I ever will. I've given some clues away here as to what that real-life case is. Have a think. Search your memories. Scour the internet, and maybe you'll find the real me. The real Evelyn. And if you do, you'll see photos of me being dragged into court, being led into the back of a police van. If you find those, you'll also find photos of Daniel, the real killer in this story.
Story time while I try to fix this strawberry shortcake store-bought slime Appalachian Mountain edition. I get these slimes from 5 and Below, y'all. 5 and Below. It's been so... Okay, I'm gonna crash out. Natalie spends the summer in the Appalachian Mountains. Ooh, I don't have a smell. It smell like they tried to put smell in here. She be spending the summer with her grandma. So she practically grew up... Oh my gosh, ew. She practically grew up in the Appalachian Mountain region. She knows about the stories. It's super sticky. This is the first one that's been bad. Natalie knows not to go outside at night. She knows not to whistle in the woods. She knows what could be lurking in the forest, though she never really believed it. It's literally sticking to everything. I swear I'm not over exaggerating it. Okay. Natalie ends up making a friend called Star. Now, Star, she knows nothing about the Appalachian region. Though she's heard stories on TikTok and on Instagram, she's never really freaking believed it. And yes, we had to pull out the big guns because this slime is super sticky, and yeah. Summer and Natalie click extremely fast, and Natalie tries to warn Summer of what could await in the forest. But Summer's one of those girls who don't follow nobody. She don't care what nobody gotta say. She gonna do what she wanna do. Now, Natalie's grandparents were going to be leaving her the house because I think they were going to be gone for the weekend. I actually have to go check. Yeah, y'all, they were going to be gone for the weekend. So Summer ends up convincing Natalie to do things she knows she ain't supposed to be doing, like going outside at night. I'm going to try my hardest to save this slime. It's just like a bit unactivated. When Natalie invites Summer over, they're having a good time. Like, all day they're having fun. They're eating marshmallows by the campfire. By a certain time, Natalie knows she's supposed to be in that house and she's not supposed to be outside. But what does Summer do? She peer pressures her. Summer tells Natalie that they're gonna tell like a little scary story time, because what could happen? Who is gonna hurt them out here? Like, nothing, ghosts don't exist. They're telling scary story times by the campfire when they're supposed to be inside, when all of a sudden everything goes quiet. They can't hear nothing. No bug, nothing. Everything is silent. That's when Summer gets the bright idea to whistle. Now, there's a lot of stigma around whistling. Some people say whistling calls the devil. Some people say you're not supposed to whistle in the house because it can call the devil. There's a lot of stigma around whistling. But one thing I know you're not supposed to do for sure is whistle in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains. Okay? I think I fixed it to an extent, but it's still like, it's not as sticky. I feel like I did a good job by like adding more glue and activating it. And now I'm going to add these little cute little bead things. I accidentally said the story wrong. She whistled before everything went silent. My bad. So when Summer whistled, everything goes quiet. And it's so quiet that you could literally hear a pin drop 10 feet away. Like, that's how quiet it is. So when Summer whistles, Natalie tells her stop doing that. And she doesn't listen. She keeps going. Summer only stops when she hears her name being called. Now, Natalie can't hear this. Only Summer can. And then they both hear a creak, like someone stepping on something in the bushes. Because in the backyard of Natalie's grandparents' home, it's nothing but woods. It's literally woods. That's why they have a rule that you're supposed to be in the house before nightfall. The creaks and the cracks start getting louder and louder and louder and louder to where it sounds like it's by the edge of the bush line. This is where they both hear this screeching, almost ringing sound and it's like hurting their ears. So they both run inside. They made it inside just in time, because guess what they see coming out the bushes? Something on all fours, pale white, mouth open. I'm done. No. They watched that thing all night right before sunrise, and it went right back into the woods. Natalie never seen that thing again, and she stopped talking to Summer after that. I would too. I mean, I don't know what's with all these story times of people just like completely disobeying like a rule that certain people follow in a certain area, but y'all need to stop. I think I did fix this slime because, I know her name is Blueberry Muffin before anyone says she's not Strawberry Shortcake. She's a part of the Strawberry Shortcake friend group. Bye, guys. It's been so long I almost forgot, but get your money's worth and let it drain. Bye, guys.
Want to get creeped out? As a paranormal investigator, one of the stories that keeps me up at night is the story of the Union Screaming House. Ever heard of it? This guy, Steven, moves into the house in the year 2000 with his 3 children, all under the age of 12. And pretty quickly, they start to experience the paranormal. Also, I want to mention the person who owns and rents the house to them is sus, okay? Like, this whole situation is weird. So they move into the house. Things, of course, start pretty light. A closet door that won't stay closed. Hearing noises upstairs when there's no one up there. Coming home to find all of the lights are on, even though they're positive they all shut them off. But events escalate pretty quickly to their son seeing a terrifying monster coming up the stairs from the basement, to them hearing really intense noises in the house, including, you guessed it, screaming. There is a reason it's called the Union Screaming House from Union, Missouri. The craziest part of the story is that Steven goes and lives in this house not even for long. The paranormal activity is so terrifying, so extreme, that him and his children move out very quickly. But the wild part is that from experiencing this, Stephen becomes a paranormal investigator and winds up helping a lady who moves into the same house later. And what she experiences is what nightmares are made of, okay? Jessica and I had an episode come out about this last week. And then we have another episode coming out about the woman he helps later, Helen, and just the craziness and the terrifying events that she experiences. Okay, and not only that, sorry, I have to add this in. Stephen does not share the identities of the real people who experienced this haunting or the person who owns the house. And I went on a serious deep dive digging sleuth mission after reading his book. And I'm pretty sure I figured out who owned the house and some really wild information about them. So I'm just saying, if you guys like extreme hauntings and crazy shit, why aren't you listening to our podcast? Because it's like Summerween vibes and it comes out every Friday. So, okay.
Okay, so I literally just pulled over to tell you what the hell just happened to me and my dogs. It's me and my dogs, Dakota, Harley. We are on our way to this lake to go live stream and to go swimming, and we drive through this like beat down hick town, okay? And I mean, like, it's in the middle of nowhere, and it's just like, it literally reminds me of that movie Deliverance. So, you know, we're driving down the street and I see this little old lady, dude, this little old lady who's got like these overalls on, like these pink overalls and a white t-shirt, and she's just walking by herself down the street, right? And I notice as she's walking, she literally has like blood, like right here, and like a little bit on her shirt, but it was going down her face. I'm thinking, oh my God, this poor old lady is by herself and she must have fell. Like, she must have fell and she needs help. So I drive up to her and I pull over, and she's looking down at the ground with just like blood dripping. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, ma'am, are you okay? Do you need me to call an ambulance? And tell me how this lady literally, dude, it's like a scene from a horror movie. This lady just goes like this, like she's looking down and then just slowly looks up at me and just smiles, like slowly smiles. At that point, I'm just staring at her, and my dog's in the back seat, like hitting me in the shoulder, like, drive, Sparrow, drive, fuck this lady. Dude, I am telling you, that was one of the creepiest freaking encounters I've ever had. And yes, I feel bad. I did leave her. I'm not gonna lie, y'all. I got so scared, I left. I had to pull over to like show you, because like I'm literally like shooken up about it. That was like the creepiest freaking thing. I'm probably gonna end up calling 911 when I get off. I'm gonna actually call when I get off this phone, because that's not okay. That was the creepiest thing I've ever experienced with an encounter with a poor little old lady, dude. I swear, my life just attracts scary stories. Like, I swear, oh my God.
If you're scared of like paranormal activity and spooky stories, then definitely stay on this, because I want to scare the shit out of you, babe. I haven't had an encounter. I've literally been attacked by a spirit, a ghost, or a demon. You can decide in the comments what it is, okay, people? So there I am, okay? I'm in a box room, okay? Shoved in there like Harry Potter. Single bed can only get in there. Now I'm in the big room because my sister moved out, thank God, because, oh my God, I hate that room, that little room. I was sleeping one night in there, okay? And something squeezed my hip. I saw a hand go down the side of the bed, okay? I kid you not. On my life, on literally anything, may I have another stroke again. The hand was like a greeny colour as well. It was skinny. It was giving you haven't had a meal in a hot time. It's giving Monjaro hand. I was so motherfucking scared. I scream, okay? Mum comes running into the room and everything. Wake up the damn house. Tell them what happened. Oh, they think I'm delusional. I'm a liar. Okay. I am, but not about this. I explain that something squeezed my hips, okay? Lift up my shirt. Tell me how there is handprint marks on me. Are you taking the fucking piss? I didn't sleep in that room for years and years and years. I was scared absolutely fucking shitless, and still to this day I have no idea what it was. We have no idea. My mum has a connection with like the other world, like spirits and stuff. Like, she's had some really fucking crazy things, and I've also had crazy things. My sister's also had experiences. I don't know if the house is haunted or the family was haunted. I don't fucking know. What was that? Someone please tell me what that was, please.
Nope, I'd be out. One of my followers who would like to remain anonymous reached out to me and told me this story, and one of the most unsettling things is it starts with her 6-year-old daughter. So about 4 years ago, she says that one morning her daughter woke up and casually came to her and said someone named Bob had been in the bed with her. the night before. Yeah, no, I'd be losing it already. Now, this woman makes it very clear that there is nobody in the family named Bob. They don't know any Bobs. But her daughter was completely matter of fact about it and said that she could feel him lying right there against her. And it gets worse. She goes and rolls over to give who she thought was her mom a kiss. And when she rolls over to do so, there lies Bob. Luckily, when she did roll over, she said that he instantly just disappeared. She mentions her daughter often brings this incident up and still has a really hard time going into her room and won't go in on her own. Which, yeah, girl, same. Okay, so fast forward now to September of last year. So she's fast asleep, but all of a sudden she abruptly wakes up and she sees what appeared to be her 16-year-old son just sort of standing there ominously in her bedroom. And it's about 11:30 p.m. So she asks him, "What do you think you're doing up this late?" And he doesn't answer. And instead, he just takes a slow step towards her, and then another step and another step. And as he is slowly creeping towards her, she is looking right at his face, but she says that the closer he gets, the more distorted his face appears until he finally reaches the side of her bed and he is not her son anymore. Okay, and so get this. That actually happened twice in the span of 3 days. So the second time that she sees this figure standing there and he starts to creep towards her, she rolls over to sort of face the wall so that she doesn't have to see him coming, which I don't know, I probably would have fled the room. Anyway, so she rolls over with her eyes closed tightly. And then as she slowly opens her eyes, guys, he is there laying with her with his back up against the wall and his face right here with this huge menacing grin. And his eyes were black holes where eyes should be. So I asked them, like, has this kind of thing always happened? How long have you been living there? And she said that they'd been living there for the past 17 years. And little things would go on, but it is getting increasingly more bold. Like whatever the heck is there, these entities or entity, it's just like ramping up. It started off kind of small, where over the years, the lights would flicker on and off, and they would have electricians come out, but to no avail. There was just never anything that they could find wrong. They also say that they can hear heavy breathing throughout the home, and there have been times where she is woken up by the feeling of scratching, and then sure enough, there are these scratches on her arms and legs. And now this, where it's appearing to her and her daughter. 17 years in this home, and it's only getting worse. I would have to be gone. So what are your thoughts? I know she'll be in the comments reading them. Drop them below. And if you have a creepy paranormal story of your own that happens in your haunted house, I gotta hear. And if you're new here, definitely follow for more creepy story time.
Every door, window, and cabinet was open in the house. This is the second story from my follower who has had paranormal activity following him since his father brought something sinister home from Louisiana. My brother and I were renting a house. It was a small rundown house. If anything needed to be fixed, we had to replace or fix the problem. We moved in and there was nothing out of the ordinary until one day we were going to paint the living room. We moved the furniture to the middle of the room and covered it, except the stereo and TV. We were watching satellite and the channel started to change. I called out to my brother and I said, "Hey, I was listening to that." My brother says, "I'm not in the room." So I looked to see if something is on the remote, but it was on top of the TV. I changed the channel back to the show I was listening to. When I turn my back again, the TV changes back to the other show it stopped on earlier. So I take the batteries out and use the satellite unit to change the channel. Still, it goes right back to the other channel. Now I'm furious. I look around and say out loud, "Stop playing." So at the time, the channel starts randomly changing. I unplug the satellite from the wall and the PS2 turns on and starts to play the game that was in the system. Then it would turn off and back on. Then the stereo turned on, and the dial just started to turn and go through the channels. The volume then started to go up and down. My brother and I were stunned by the fact that this was just like a kid playing. My brother yelled and said, "Enough." And just like that, everything turns off. Even the electricity shut off, and we had to go and flip the main breaker outside. The breaker itself had been shut off from the outside. So everything settled down until the next morning. When I woke up that next morning, everything in the house that had a door was open. The windows were also open. I asked my brother, "What were you trying to do?" He asked what I was talking about. He was trying to sleep. I said, "Everything is open. The front door, the back door, cabinets, bathroom, refrigerator, freezer, oven, closet, lock boxes, gun cabinets, and windows. They are all open." I said, "The AC works. Stop opening everything up." He thought I was joking until he got up to see for himself. Confused, he said, "I didn't do this." I said, "Well, surely I didn't do it. I can't stand to have an open door." Well, we go on about our day. I worked the evening shift at a local jail. I typically got home around midnight. I showered and sat down to relax and played my PS2, and the house phone rings. I answered it, and no one was there. I hung up the phone and started playing the game again. And then the phone rings again. So I answered it, and I hear a hissing growl with a high-pitched scream so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. I hung up the phone, not giving it a second thought, and I continued to play my game. My recliner was in front of the living room closet. From behind me, I heard the closet door open slowly. This closet has a sliding latch on it, so there's no way for it to just open. A little uneasy, I reclined my chair to close the door, but when I looked, nothing. The door was closed. This door squeaked when opened. That's why I knew it had been opened, but it was closed when I looked. So I keep playing the game, and still in the reclined position, the door opened up and started hitting my chair. I jumped up to see if one of my cousins was playing a practical joke. So I pulled the door open to find clothes and boxes. At this point, there's nothing else to do but try to sleep. So I lay down, and I hear my brother come home, and I tell him what happened. He said, "Well, it must be after you." We go to bed, and about 3 or 4 in the morning, I feel my bed bouncing, like someone jumping on it, and my light comes on. I'm looking around in my room, and my brother gets up and says, "Hey, go to bed and leave me alone." I said, "Hey, someone just jumped on my bed and woke me up and turned on my light." As I was looking under my bed, I look up to see my dresser drawer and closet doors open. I say, "Hey, stop playing and let me sleep." A few weeks go by, and everything is peaceful. Till one night, I decide to take a bath and soak my sore muscles. I never take a bath, always showers, but this night I wanted to soak, so I did. As I'm relaxing, the light goes out. You've got to be kidding me. I just stayed in the water, and the same scream, hissing growl I heard on the phone, I'm hearing in the bathroom with the lights out. I get up, kind of freaked out, but the light comes on. There were 3 marks on the mirror, like when you write in the steam. There were lines going down the middle of the mirror. I never saw anything because there was just enough light from the security light outside to see around the bathroom. Not a lot more happened at this house because the landlord wouldn't fix the roof. He told us to get umbrellas for inside the house, so we moved.
So there are vampires in New Orleans. I don't know if you guys have seen this video, I would tag her, but from what it seems, she no longer has a social media account. But this woman claimed to have encountered some vampires in New Orleans. I am back with another spooky story. At the time, she was a Lyft driver in New Orleans, which means that she encounters all types of people. Now, she had this one particular ride that was very interesting. And the interesting thing is she recalls the conversation, but she does not remember what the person looked like. And as she's telling the story, you can see her recalling and actually hearing the lady's voice in her head. She only remembers like the bottom face area, so like the lip area of the lady that was speaking to her. And she remembers the lady touching her shoulder, and she remembers what it felt like the second the lady touched her. She remembers certain parts of the experience, but not everything, because some of it has just been erased. So she's making small talk, as she does with all her other passengers. The passenger is telling her that she has great energy. They're chit-chatting, the lady starts asking her questions, nothing too personal. So the passenger tells her that she actually wasn't from New Orleans, but she loves New Orleans. When the driver asks the passenger, okay, well, where are you from? The lady told her that she's from very far away. The lady touches her shoulder at some point. Now, this is when things get really strange. The second the passenger touches her on her shoulder, she froze. She remembers her hands on the wheel. The car was not moving. She was literally frozen. And while she is frozen in the car, she hears this lady's voice, but not out loud, in her head. And she hears her voice reassuring her, don't be scared, and that she's not going to harm her. And the next thing she knows, the car is moving again. Everything is moving again. The driver turns around and looks at the passenger. She's just sitting back there calmly. So the driver asks her, what did you do to me? Y'all, the passenger smiles and says, I just leached some of your energy. And then she goes on to say, this is gonna sound crazy, but I assure you, I'm a vampire. And she goes on to say that she's not the type of vampires that we hear about in the books and movies. She said those types of vampires exist, but they're very rare these days. What? She says she's a vampire that feeds off of energy. And all she has to do is touch you to get it. And then she says that New Orleans is a great place for her kind to exist. And the passenger also went on to say that there were other members of her tribe, all staying and living in New Orleans. And the driver says she remembers this part so distinctively, and she believes that when the vampire touched her shoulder, it was implanting a memory, an idea, or a thought or something. She gave her a piece of herself so that she is able to remember that part of their conversation. Now, she says she doesn't know why the vampire lady chose her for this, but she told her that there are vampires that survive off of good energy and bad energy. There are vampires that also survive off of spectral energy, and some that survive off of the most common one. New Orleans apparently is the only place where you can find members of all 4 of those vampire tribes. Maybe it was a warning. The driver felt like maybe she isn't lying because of how she felt. She says she doesn't remember dropping the lady off. All she remembers is that 2 hours later, she's in a weird, strange part of town, and she has to basically find her way back home. She was just in a parking lot. She says she knows it sounds weird and she probably shouldn't be talking about it, but she told her story, and I don't know what happened, but her page is nowhere to be found on TikTok. It was people that had already screen recorded the video that, posted this. However, her story time actually triggered a bunch of other people to come out and tell their story. Let me know if you guys want to hear more.
Let's read some scary stories. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a blanket and get cozy, because we're about to read a creepy story. Back in 2021, me and my friend were driving around some logging roads late at night in Maine because we were bored, and we ended up stopping near this old clearing in the woods. It was super foggy and dead quiet until we started hearing whistling coming from the trees. At first, it sounded like someone was messing with us, but then we saw this tall thing standing just outside the headlights. It looked human at first, but the proportions were completely wrong, like its arms were way too long and its legs bent weird. The creepiest part was how still it stood there smiling at us. Not normal smiling either, like its mouth was stretched too far across its face. The second Tyler flashed the high beams at it, the thing moved sideways into the trees insanely fast, almost twitching instead of running. We freaked out and took off down the road, but after like 30 seconds, I heard tapping on my passenger window. I looked over, and that thing was running next to the car while we were going at least 40 miles per hour. Its face was right next to mine, and it looked almost wet, with these pale eyes reflecting in the dark. Then it started trying to talk. At first it sounded distorted, but after a second it perfectly copied Tyler's voice and said, "Stop the car." I've never seen someone panic like he did right there. A couple nights later, Tyler called me at like 2 a.m, sounding terrified, asking if I had been outside his house. I obviously said no, and he told me he heard tapping on his second-story window and then heard my voice outside saying, "Tyler, let me in." He said he almost answered until he realized I never call him Tyler. I always call him Ty. When he looked outside, he saw something crouched on the roof under his window, smiling up at him. Ever since then, I don't drive those roads at night anymore, because honestly, I still think whatever that thing is followed us home. The second story is titled Scary Encounter. I'm not really one to talk about the paranormal a lot, but this recently has been on my mind. When I was 17, I lived with my mom and my 6-year-old sister. It was a hot summer day, freshly 10 a.m. My girlfriend had stayed with me that night. My bedroom was upstairs, and if you visualize it, you can go up the stairs from my bedroom and turn left, and my sister's room was right there. My mom was out at work that morning. For context, my sister got this porcelain doll from my tia. I'm not exactly sure why, but she gave it to her as a birthday present. My sister loved it, like way too much. My mom kept it in a closet because she got weird vibes from it. I'm not sure if it has any ties to the situation, but I've never had anything paranormal happen to me after we sold it. I'd woken up before my girlfriend and went downstairs to make coffee. My sister's door was open, and I swear on everything I believe, I watched my girlfriend walk into my sister's room. I abandoned my coffee and followed her in there. She was standing, looking out the window next to my sister. I went next to her, stared out the window for a bit, then asked what she was doing in there. When I turned my head, nobody was there. Come to find out, she'd been asleep upstairs the whole time. My sister woke up the next week and came crying to my room because she saw something on all fours in her doorway. We have no pets. After we got the doll, my mother used to have my room upstairs. She told me when we swapped rooms that there was something that would stare at her through the doorway, perched on the stairs. We never found out what this was. Let me know what you thought of those stories, and if you have any scary stories of your own you'd like me to read, just send me a DM.
This story has a happy ending. That's my promise to you, but it starts out bleak. A boy is kidnapped, snatched from his home in broad daylight, and no one sees anything, no one hears anything. How is that even possible? A busy street full of life, full of witnesses, and not a single soul sees a boy being forcibly pulled into a van? What kind of society do we live in where we allow that to happen? It gets worse. Turns out the boy isn't taken for ransom. The police are clueless. Days, weeks, and months go by, but there are no closer to finding him. It's like he disappeared into thin air. They whisper behind closed doors, but he didn't, of course, we know that. The parents are broken, shattered, in pieces, unfixable. He was the only child, too, so they have no one else to care for. So, they don't. They don't care. They fall apart at the seams. But they never give up hope. The boy wakes up in excruciating pain every day. He hasn't seen the sun for weeks now, a pallid and morbidly thin shadow of the lively child he once was. He only knows darkness and torment and fear. Minutes feel like hours, hours like days, days like weeks, and he cries until there are no more tears, and then when he's out of salt and water, his body convulses in these horrible seizures, as if his weakened soul is desperately looking for an off switch. There is no such switch. They won't allow him to die. He knows that. They come down into the darkness every 2 hours like clockwork, with their video cameras and knives and blowtorches and wires and scalpels. They cut him, slice him, burn him, shock him, all while joking and laughing and idly conversing, like it's just another day at the job. There are no humans in that basement anymore. Just a broken thing and the things that broke him. We are a heinous species, aren't we? When left unchecked, when promised we will not be persecuted for our crimes, we will do them all. For money, for pleasure, for kick, for science, for curiosity, just because we can. That's who we are. That's the essence of humanity. But I promise you the story has a happy ending, and it does. I realize you're worried about your boy. You don't have to be. We're taking good care of him. He keeps asking about you both, in pathetic sniffled sobs and pleas, but I told him that we killed you, more tears for the camera. He loves you dearly. I just thought you should know that. We will keep him alive for a long, long, long time. Be happy. This is a happy ending. Just like I promised.
I did some work at a house that had crawl spaces inside of the walls. So the company that I worked for, we cleaned out houses after somebody had passed away. It was a sad job. I mean, family members would come in, they'd clear out what they wanted, and then we would just take care of the rest before the house was sold. So we show up to this house, and the neighbors outside, and they walk up to us and they chat to us a little bit about who used to live there, and then they said, if you find any cassette tapes, like, don't play them. Definitely a weird comment to get from somebody, but I just kind of shrugged it off, said, okay, we won't, whatever. We went into the house, and we noticed that the house was very, very clean. Like, it looked like nobody really lived there. There was some furniture, but it was pretty clean. And the only weird thing other than that maybe was in every single room that we went to go look in, they had a chair facing the doors of the room, not towards like a TV or a window. It was facing the entrance, like they were watching the entrance, waiting for somebody to come in or something of that sort. We headed down to the basement and we started to pack things up, and one of my coworkers came across a big cardboard box filled with cassette tapes. And the cassette tapes, they didn't have anything on them except for dates, but there was one specific one that said, if you hear yourself, don't listen to it. Of course, my coworker wanted to listen to it because it told us to turn it off. I told him that it wasn't a good idea because the house already felt a little bit odd, and I remember what the neighbor said, but they continued to do what they're going to do. They found an old cassette tape player in the basement, and they popped one in. First, it was just static, and then it turned into breathing, and then it was like an old man's voice, and it said, she can hear us through the walls. We just kind of looked at each other like, kind of, not giggling, but just like smirking, because we just figured the old man was paranoid. Then another voice started to talk, and it was a woman. It was very soft, but it sounded like it was directly behind us, not on the cassette tape player. We kept listening. We couldn't make out really what she was saying, is it was pretty faint and soft. But we turned off the cassette tape, and we all looked behind us, and there was nobody there. And when we did that, that's when we finally noticed that the basement walls were not made of concrete. They were made of carpet padding and insulation foam. It was like the entire basement had been soundproofed, and somebody said maybe he was recording somebody. And as we kept cleaning things out, we noticed that there was this huge vent behind a couple of shelves. It was absolutely big enough for somebody to crawl through, and it led to every single bedroom and every single bathroom in the entire house. The man literally built crawl spaces in his home, inside of the walls. We ended up calling the police because the entire thing felt criminal at this point, and they came out, and he wanted to see the cassette tape that we had listened to, and he listened to it, and after it ended, his expression changed a bit. He asked exactly where we found the tape and if there was more, and then he let us know apparently some lady went missing in the 90s around this area, like in this neighborhood, and the details that were in the tape were details that were not ever released publicly. The part that really bothers me is the neighbor that we talked to previously. They came over while the police were there right before we left, and the police were asking him a couple of questions, and the neighbor said, yeah, sometimes late at night, like, we would hear the man talking to somebody, but that's the weird part because we all knew that he lived alone.
Okay, I need you guys to hear me out. This photo right here is America's missing persons map. It shows every missing person that has disappeared in the greater United States. And this second photo is America's subterranean cave system. Why does it match up perfectly? Now, I am not the only person that has noticed this. Today on Reddit, I found a story of a girl that looked a little bit too far into this, and she regrets it. So Lizzie lives in rural Kentucky, deep in the foothills. And so when she came across this map online, she noticed that her county had like a little cluster of red dots. So she decided she was going to zoom in and see where exactly this was all happening. She noticed that all these people were going missing right near the Blackwood sinkholes. This cave system was not a tourist trap by any means. They had much larger caves around her area. But it was a place where locals like to go hiking and go and camp. So she figures this has to be more than just coincidence. So she ends up showing her girlfriend. Jess was the type of girl who loved to go camping. She owned 3 different types of hiking boots and had almost every piece of equipment you could think of. Lizzie's also trying to explain this to her without sounding completely crazy. So Jess rolls her eyes and she grins and said, so you want to go ghost hunting? Lizzie says, no, I want to go debunking. Like, I want to prove this wrong. The hike to the sinkholes was about 3 miles in from the nearest logging road, and the terrain was brutal to get out there. After about an hour, they reached the main entrance of the cave. The mouth to the cave was a horizontal slash in the limestone. It was about 10 feet high and 30 feet across. Jess takes one look at it and says, "Creepy. I dig it." So they set up camp about 50 yards away from the entrance. It was just far enough to avoid the draft coming out of the cave, but also enough that they could stare into the darkness. So Jess prepped the grill, because they were cooking ribs with spicy bourbon sauce. I guess the smell of these ribs were intoxicating. They were so ready to eat. Jess was walking back from the tent with some drinks, and suddenly there was a downdraft gust of wind, and it carried all of that smoke from the fire into the mouth of the cave. So Jess made a joke like, "Oh, we're feeding the beast." And Lizzie says, "I hope they like ribs." So they ate their food as sunset turned into twilight, and then they drank their drinks as twilight turned into pitch black. Just as they're in the middle of conversation, Jess suddenly puts a hand on Lizzie's shoulder. Now Lizzie thought she was maybe going to get a little lucky, but Jess shushes her. Prior to this, you could hear the wind gusting through the trees, you could hear the crickets and the cicadas and the occasional animal. But suddenly, the forest felt silent. It was thick, heavy, and oppressive, like it was holding its breath. Then the cave moaned. At first you could have mistaken it for the wind, but it was too low and too long. So they are silent at this point. And suddenly, it gets louder and closer. So Jess whispers, "Did you hear that?" So Lizzie grabbed the flashlight and she shined it over toward the cave. And she realized just how dark it was in there, because that cave swallowed every ounce of light there was. So they're talking themselves down, saying it was probably a coyote or a bear or something, but we should pack up. We need to go. But Jess says, "That doesn't sound like a bear." So they're scrambling to clean up. They're picking up all of their trash and they're throwing the bones all into the trash bag. And then the sound changed. It wasn't a moaning anymore. It sounded like a wet cough coming from inside of the cave. Then there was a voice, or something trying to be a voice. All it said was, "Come." So Jess dropped the cooler lid and said, "What the hell was that?" So Lizzie grabbed the hatchet that they were using for firewood and said, "We're leaving now." And Jess says, "But the tent." And Lizzie says, "Just leave it." And that's when the smell hit them. It wasn't the sweet taste of their barbecue anymore. It was something rancid, or like it smelled like rotting meat. There was like an ammonia scent, or like something muskier. It was like a dog that had been gone for days. Then from the darkness of the cave, they came. They kind of looked human, but they were wrong. They looked like their bodies had been stretched out on a rack. Like pale skin was stretched over bones that just had too many joints. The girls assumed that they were blind, because they had milky white eyes. There were 3 of them. 2 of them crawled on the ground, and one was walking in kind of like a robotic limping motion. They went straight for the grill. One of them picked up the burning hot grill, and it didn't even flinch when it sizzled its skin. Lizzie whispered, "Don't move." Whatever this thing was, dropped the grate to the grill and stuck its head in the air, and it started smelling around. And that's when it turned its head over toward them. And it opened its mouth wide and said, "Meat." So they threw the bag of trash toward these 3 creatures and took off running. They sprinted as fast as they could through the dark forest. But at this point, they could hear bushes and branches breaking behind them. But it didn't sound like it was 3 of them anymore. It sounded like a lot more. And they were moving so fast. They burst out onto the logging road, jump in their Jeep, and they slammed the locks down. And luckily they did, because the second that they were in the car, suddenly something hit their back window. In the red glow of the taillights, Lizzie could see them. There was so many of them standing in the tree line and in the middle of the road. They were just watching. They drove in silence until they hit the highway. They didn't report it because who would believe them after that? They just told their friends that they got scared by a cougar. Lizzie went back to that map today, and she was noticing something. Most of the people that go missing are right around the holidays, in the middle of the summer, 4th of July, Memorial Day, when people are outside barbecuing. She always thought that they were just sinkholes in the ground, but she's realizing that they aren't. They're ventilation holes, and anytime somebody's out there barbecuing, that smoke will waft into the holes, and it's ringing the dinner bell. See, and this is why, again, I don't go into the woods, because that's so scary. Thank you for listening to today's story on Explore Paranormal. As always, I'm Jason. Let me know in the comments if you guys like this story, because I think it's crazy that she didn't report it to anyone. That's wild to me. Anyways, throw a heart on the video if you liked it, and give me a follow, because it helps me out, and you can see more stories like this. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.
A series of spooky stories, Women's Intuition, Part 12. August of 2025, I lost my stepdad. My dad was the first call I made because I needed him. October that same year, found out that my dad was sick with awful pneumonia. I told him he wasn't allowed to leave me too because I couldn't take it. He kept going to the doctor, but it was just getting worse. By December, we found out that it was stage 4 cancer in his lungs. They did everything that they could for him, but he went home on hospice in late January of this year. I had been to see him several times and he kept getting worse. One night in the beginning of February at 11 p.m., I sat up, my chest feeling tight, almost hard to breathe. I had a thought, but I hoped I was wrong. I went to sleep after the feeling went away. The next morning, I found out that he had passed away about the same time that I'd had that tight feeling in my chest. The next morning, I found out that he passed away about the same time that I had that tight feeling in my chest. I believe with my whole heart that he was coming to say goodbye and sorry that he had to leave me too. After his funeral, I held his urn and I said, I told you you're not allowed to leave me. Now I'm planning on getting him some lotion for Father's Day because he's a little ashy. Oh my God. One time I was driving, I had a tiny little 2-door car at the time. I heard this voice in my head yelling at me to slam on the brakes, and I did. As soon as I came to a full stop, a truck blew through a stop sign right in front of me. Had to have been going at least 70. Had I not stopped, they would have hit my driver's side, and I probably would have been dead. I was sitting in the living room. It was about 5 p.m., and the sun was setting. I had the front door open so fresh air could come in, and our cats could look out through the storm door. For whatever reason, I felt like I was being watched, so I got up, slammed the door, and I went to tell my mom. She reassured me that no one was there and I told her I should check on my sister. The next day, my sister, who lived in a different state, said some creep from her child's school was looking in through her windows and asking her where her husband was. I immediately knew that that was the feeling that I had the night before. Back in the 2000s, I was supposed to deploy embedded with a small team. I was partnered with this guy and we traveled to many states for training. During one of the trainings, I kept getting phone calls from random people in my life that they dreamt that I passed away during deployment or they went to my funeral. Honestly, why would they tell you that right now, knowing that you were about to deploy, just to freak you out, you know? Most of these people were not connected to each other, but only to me. This set in some anxiety, and I knew that I was going to pass. My daughter was young during this time, and I prepared not to come back. Eventually, I told my mom about what was happening. She asked me what I wanted to do. Side note, I'm Native American with traditional beliefs. I said just pray that the best outcome and where I'm supposed to be happens. Days later, I get a phone call from my sponsor and said that my role has been eliminated and to go back to my command. I asked why it was eliminated, and he said that mine and my partner's name were just not there anymore. After my original deployment passed, the area that I was assigned to was part of a big incident, and I would have most likely not made it back. I was at a party with friends, and I was dancing when I got a wave of something in my body. I looked around, and nothing was wrong, but I grabbed my friends, and I told them that we needed to leave. Not even 30 seconds later, a girl fell through a glass table and everyone rushed out stampede style. We were the first out and we're fine. 2 years ago, I got invited to a Memorial Day weekend thing at a spring near where I grew up. I had never been there before because my parents say that it's too crazy there. After my friends begged me, I went. As I was waiting in line to get into the springs, I started having a panic attack, which was not normal for me at the time, and a feeling that I shouldn't be there. Later that night, I witnessed a shooting and a man died in my arms. Whoa. A few years ago, I started having nightmares about my boyfriend, now fiance, and I getting into a terrible wreck. In the dream, I was the driver and he wasn't wearing his seatbelt and he didn't make it out. A few weeks later, I went to pick him up. He never usually wore his seatbelt on back roads, but I told him that I wasn't going anywhere until he buckled up. That day, I was ran off the road. We went into a ditch and rolled 3 times. We made it out virtually unscathed. He had a concussion and I needed a few stitches, but nothing too bad. I genuinely believe that if I hadn't forced him to buckle up, he wouldn't be here today. These stories are never going to cease to amaze me. Come back for part 13.
I heard this story about a house that was completely infested with mimics. Now, it all started off with this family who lived in New York. And they had lived in this big home in a rural area. They, really, for the longest time, didn't have anything weird ever happen. Until one night, the wife and husband are, in the living room, and their kids are gone with a family friend. Well, the husband says, I'm going to, leave, and I'll be back. I'm going to go to the store. Do you need anything? And his wife says, no, I'm good. I'll see you when you get back. So her husband goes out the front door, gets in his car, and drives off. Right after he pulls out of the driveway, all of a sudden she hears a noise upstairs. And when she walks upstairs, she sees her husband come out of the closet and just start walking down the hallway. And she's like, honey, like, wait, how'd you get upstairs? Like, you came back home? And he's like, yeah, I'm going back to the car. I'll talk to you later. And so he just like goes downstairs and goes out the front door. So she calls her husband on the cell phone and was like, why'd you come back to the house? Like, that was kind of weird. What were you doing upstairs? And he goes, what are you talking about? Like, I'm far from home. Like, I've been driving for like a little while now. And she's like confused, and she thinks like he's just playing a prank on her. So fast forward to the wife and their 2 kids are sitting on the couch, and the wife and one of the kids are sitting on the couch, and one of the daughters comes downstairs, and they say, like, hey, what are you doing? You want to come watch a movie with us? And the daughter doesn't say anything. And they're like, hey, aren't you going to respond? Like, what's wrong? And like, the daughter still doesn't say anything. She just keeps walking past them, and she goes into another room. So the sister like follows and is like, says their name and is like, what are you doing? Well, all of a sudden, like, the sister comes back down the stairs again, because she said, I heard you guys calling my name. And they're like, wait, no, you just walked past us into that room. Like, how'd you get upstairs? And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, I've been upstairs in the bathroom. And once again, like, they didn't know how, the wife didn't know what to think of this. So finally, like, the last straw was one night, her husband and her 2 kids, they had left to go do something, and she's up in her bedroom. She hears like some rustling sound in her closet, and she's like, what is there, like something in my closet? She opens the door, and there's her husband, like, crouched down, holding his knees, like sitting in the closet, kind of like looking really weird, like has this strange look on her face. And she's like, what are you doing in the closet? I thought you were with our daughters. And like, the man just, her husband just says, come in the closet with me. And she's like, what? And he's like, come in here, come in the closet. And she instantly like knew that wasn't her husband, and she ran out the door and calls up her husband and is like, get here right now. And shortly after that, they end up moving.
When I was 8 years old, I saw a woman staring at me from across a field. 22 years later, and I realized it was me. Hi everyone, welcome back to Candlelit Whispers with Amanda. Today we have an interesting story about layered time. I think time is layered, and I accidentally proved it. When I was 8 years old, my parents rented a small house in rural Tennessee. The house sat on top of a hill overlooking a cornfield. Nothing unusual ever happened there, at least not until one summer evening. I remember staring at my bedroom window just before sunset. The field was glowing orange from the setting sun. I saw a woman standing near the tree line. She wasn't moving, and she was just staring up at the house. I remember feeling uncomfortable because she wasn't doing anything. She wasn't walking, and she wasn't looking around. She was directly looking at my window, at me. I ran and got my dad. When we came back, she was gone. My dad searched the field but never found anyone. For years, I remembered that woman. And the weird part wasn't that she was standing there, it was her face. Even as a kid, I thought she looked strangely familiar. Fast forward 22 years. My parents had long moved away, but one afternoon I happened to be driving through the area, and the old house was still there. Something made me pull over. I parked on the side of the road and walked towards the field. The house looked smaller than I had remembered. I stood near the tree line looking up at my old bedroom window, and that's when I froze. The angle was exactly the same. The same view, the same distance, the same spot. Then I remembered the woman, and suddenly I had this overwhelming feeling that I had stood there before. I know this sounds ridiculous, but I couldn't shake it. So I took my phone and snapped a photo of the house. Then I left. A few days later, I was going through old family photos at my mom's house, and there was a picture of me standing in my childhood bedroom. The photo had been taken only a few weeks before we moved away. I almost dropped the album. Visible through the window behind me was the woman standing at the edge of the field. My mother had never noticed her before, and the image was blurry, but not blurry enough. The clothes matched what I had been wearing the day I revisited the house. The same jacket, the same jeans, the same white sneakers. I wasn't looking at a stranger, I was looking at myself. Standing in the field 22 years later, and if that's true, then when I was 8 years old, I wasn't seeing a ghost. I was seeing another layer of time, watching me from the future. And the part that keeps me awake at night is this. When I look at that photo as an adult, I remember glancing up at the bedroom window just for a second, and I could have sworn the little girl was standing there. I firmly believe that time is layered, and I believe that we're just not capable of seeing the different layers of time all the time, but they're always there. So, I don't know if you've ever experienced something like this, put it in the comments below.
Someone was trying to break into my house. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a blanket and get cozy because I'm about to read a creepy story. After school, I got home, made food, watched TV for a while, and messed around on my computer. My mom texted me a few times reminding me to do my homework and lock the doors before sleeping. Later that night, the house started feeling weirdly quiet. Not even creepy at first, just too quiet. I finished my homework, stayed up for a bit longer, and eventually went to sleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up thirsty and went downstairs to get water. While I was in the kitchen, my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. Don't forget to lock the front door. I remember thinking, yeah, I already did, but I still walked over to check. And that's when I saw him. There was an old man standing outside the glass front door, staring directly at me. Completely motionless, balding, smiling slightly, just standing there in the dark. For a few seconds, we just looked at each other. Then he slowly tried the door handle. I ran upstairs immediately. I don't think I've ever moved that fast in my life. I locked myself in my room and hid under my bed, even though I knew it was childish. A few moments later, I heard glass shatter downstairs. My heart completely dropped. I could hear footsteps moving around the first floor. Slow footsteps, floor creaking. Somebody was actually inside my house. I tried not to breathe too loudly. I remember staring at the darkness near my bedroom door, thinking if I saw someone's feet outside the room. Then I heard police sirens outside. Right after that, police, don't move. Everything downstairs turned chaotic, yelling, running, loud footsteps. A few minutes later, an officer came upstairs and told me everything was okay. Apparently, the guy had already been reported lurking around houses in the neighborhood. And one of my neighbors called the cops after seeing him outside my house. What still freaks me out the most is the way he looked at me through the glass door. He looked completely calm, like he already knew he was getting inside. That was a short one, but let me know what you thought of that story, and if you have any scary stories of your own, just send me a DM.
Get ready with me while I tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. Someone was in my picture, but they weren't actually there. For as long as I can remember, strange things have happened around me. Genuinely unexplainable things, and some of my earliest memories are tied to things that shouldn't have been there. Things that only I could see. When I was around 5 years old, I lived with my mom in an old apartment, and almost every day I would tell her about the woman. What woman? What woman? The woman that would stand in our hallway. To this day, I can remember her so vividly. Oh, I hate this. Most notably, she had long black hair that hung down her back, almost covering her entire figure. I was never able to get a good look at her face because no matter how many times I'd see her, she would always have her back towards me. The part that sticks with me the most is that I wasn't afraid of her at all. And around that age, I figured that would be something that you would be afraid of, right? Yeah. Yes, absolutely. In fact, I was so unafraid of her that I felt a different sort of emotion toward her entirely. I used to get annoyed with her because every time I saw her, she was wearing my mom's jacket and my mom's boots. What? I would actively complain about it. I would tell my mom, that lady is wearing your clothes again. But every time I would mention her, my mom would go completely silent. She would get visibly uncomfortable. Looking back now to all of those clues, I think she knew something wasn't right, but my mom had also experienced strange things her entire life. No matter how many houses she moved into, no matter what city or neighborhood we've lived in, she's always followed by a shadow. She would describe it as a massive dark figure that would appear in corners of a room. She would tell me that it would just stand there and watch her, and sometimes when she'd look at it, it would slowly move closer and closer until it was so close that she would flinch, and then the sudden movement would make it disappear entirely. I was about 9 years old, and I had gotten my very first phone, and I was obsessed with it. I spent the entire day taking random pictures around the house. Pictures of furniture, pictures of walls, pictures of things that, in retrospect, really weren't important. I was just excited to have a phone. That evening, my mom, my sister, my cousin, and I were all sitting in the living room watching TV. Next to our living room was a den separated by old swinging doors, the kind that moved both ways, like saloon doors. Eventually, it got late and we decided it was time for bed. So we all stood up together. Someone turned off the television, and the second the room had gone quiet and dark, bang. The swinging doors suddenly flew open with the force that even we wouldn't have dared use on them. We were all staring at them in horror. And there they were, frozen in place, wide open. Before any of us could move, my mom's old stereo system in the den exploded to life. Music started blasting through the speakers at full volume, so loud that we had to yell over each other just to communicate. At the same time, every light in the room began flickering, on, off, over and over and over again. This is terrifying. The atmosphere in the house had changed in a matter of seconds, and we could all feel it. Then my cousin was the first one to move, and he decided he was going to see what was causing all of this. As he started walking toward the den, we watched him carefully, and the moment he got close to the doors, everything stopped. Instantly, the swinging doors slammed shut, the music cut off, the lights stopped flickering. Dead silence. Nobody said a word. We all ran to our rooms and barricaded ourselves inside. Later, while I was lying in bed, I started scrolling through all the pictures I'd taken earlier that day, deleting random photos, looking through them one by one, and then I found a picture that wasn't right. Earlier that day, I'd taken a photo facing the den. At the time, it looked completely normal. But now I noticed something near the doorway. No. Someone was there, peeking out from behind the swinging doors. I remember staring at the screen, trying to convince myself I was imagining it, but I wasn't. The image was crystal clear. A man's face, a full beard, dark glasses. Absolutely the hell not. There was something about his expression that was so chilling. He looked visibly evil. I don't know how else to explain it other than if you've seen that expression before, you know it. And the way he was peeking around the doorway was very clearly intentional, like he knew I was taking the picture, like he wanted to be seen. I never saw him while I was taking the photo, yet somehow he was there, captured in the image, watching, wanting, and waiting. Since that night, I refused to go into the den alone. And now, nearly 20 years later, I still think about that picture. I still think about the woman in the hallway, the shadow my mom keeps seeing, and the face staring from behind those doors. Whatever was in that apartment, whatever appeared in that photograph, I don't think it ever left. And if my mom is right, it may still be following us.
People claim that this photo is proof of the paranormal, so let's get into it. In 1924, there was an oil tanker named SS Watertown that was going from California through the Panama Canal to New Orleans and then New York. Everything seemed to be going just fine until two members of the crew, James Courtney and Michael Meehan, were ordered to go clean the cargo tank in the ship's hold. I don't know what that means, but that's just what the article says. Somehow there were fumes that were in this cargo hold, and the men succumbed to these fumes before any help could reach them. The captain ordered them to have a burial at sea. After a short service was performed, that's exactly what happened. But that wasn't the last that people would see them. The very next day, the first mate said that he had seen their faces bobbing in the water before disappearing, almost as if they were just floating there. And over the following days, several other crew members would see their faces in the water beside the ship as well. When they arrived in New Orleans, the company that owned the ship, City Services, listened to the whole crew's story about it, and they insisted that they start taking pictures of these faces beside the water. So they gave them a camera, and the ship went on its journey to New York City. And once again, the crew kept seeing their faces. So they took 6 pictures, and as soon as the pictures were taken, they locked up the film to be developed once they got to New York. When they got to New York City, the film was developed, and out of the 6 pictures that were taken, only 1 showed something. And that is the picture that we see here. You can very clearly see 2 heads like floating in the ocean. So what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that it's a hoax, or is there truth behind this picture? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and follow for more spooky things.
Crazy things guys have said to me. These are all guys from dating apps. Surprise, surprise. And as always, disclaimer, everything on my profile says I want something long-term. Also, some of these are lighthearted and just like funny, but some of them I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Okay, this first one is one of the just like stupid ones. Like, it's not that big of a deal, but I'm just like, hello. But one of my pictures is like me on the beach with the sunset behind me. And this guy liked it and like left a comment on it. And he was like, such a pretty view. Oh, you're there too. What was the goal here? Because that sounds like, you know, when people are like, oh, such a pretty view. Oh, the sunset's nice too. Something like that, you know, to say like, you're pretty. But he just didn't say that. So I'm like, is that what you were going for and you just messed it up? Or were you just trying to make me feel like I was ugly? Like, I can't tell. Like, either way, you don't have game. So it was a no from me. This one never fails to piss me off. But I can't remember exactly what the prompt is, but I think it's like, oh, a weird talent I have. And I have put on there that I can sing with my mouth closed, because I can. And the amount of guys that think they're fucking funny and like clever and like had a gotcha moment, like, haha, stupid idiot woman, because they'll comment on that and be like, so you can hum? If I was talking about humming, I would have fucking said, I can hum, you fucking chud. No, I can sing with my mouth closed. So like this one guy commented on it and was like, it's called humming, babe. You're not special. Oh, fuck you. It's not fucking humming, guys. It's not humming. But the next guy who successfully commented on this one, he said something like, motherfucker is a ventriloquist. And I'm like, yes, you would be right. That made me laugh. And that would be closer to what I'm talking about, because I'm saying words, guys. It's not humming. And all these guys, like I said, think it's like a gotcha moment, and like talking to me like I'm stupid, being like, humming is not like a crazy thing. Like, a lot of people can hum. I'm not fucking talking about humming, you fucking idiot. I found out I could do, okay, I'm gonna go on a whole side tangent now about the singing with my mouth closed thing, but it's like, it's not impressive really, but it's just like, there was an episode of iCarly where like some girl was featured on it for like singing with her mouth closed, and I tried it and then I could do it, and some people I know just can't. So I guess it's like a hidden talent type of thing. But literally, okay, I'm gonna try to do it, but I always start laughing when I do, but okay, here we go. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Somebody on iCarly did that however many years ago. And now it's like my party trick, even though it's really not that, it's not anything. But what it is not humming. Fucking bitch. Anytime a guy says that and thinks like they got me with that one, I'm like, oh my god, another fucking one to do with the fucking singing with the mouth closed. I had 3 in a row on my list. Bam, bam, bam. But this next guy, oh, he pissed me off the most out of all. He said, sweetheart, that's called humming. Ew. And then to add even more onto that, another prompt on my thing is like, the nerdiest thing about me is, and I said that I'm a huge fan of Five Nights at Freddy's. So he first of all, he said, sweetheart, that's called humming. Again, ew. And then he also put, and I can guarantee that no woman is a bigger fan of FNAF than me. So I can guarantee that no woman showers less than you. Bro, I can smell the fucking stank through my phone. Literally pissed me off so bad. Why would you think I would match with you if you are acting like I'm stupid, like calling me stupid pretty, like indirectly, and then making it a competition and like making it seem like because I'm a girl, I can't like something more than you because you deem it as like a male interest. Like, actually die. I can guarantee that no woman likes FNAF more than me. Oh, I can guarantee that you've never spoken to a woman. Like, actually, oh my gosh, so many guys in fandom spaces genuinely just piss me off because it's like, they think that everything is catered towards them, but they think that means that no girl can like that stuff. And it actually just makes me so mad. It's like when guys find out you like a certain band that they like, or like you like to play video games. Well, name 75 songs. It just pisses me off so bad. Like, shut the fuck up. Please. Okay, this next guy, I'm like, actually, what's wrong with you? His whole profile was all like, only hookups, only hookups, only hookups. I unfortunately did not look at his profile. Like, I try to every time, but sometimes I'll just, like, if I see the first picture and I'm like, oh, they're cute, I'll match with them, and I don't look at it until later. Stupid on my part. But this guy was unfortunately one of those, because he was a really cute man. Like, he was my type, I'd say. But then we were, like, chatting for a little bit, and I was like, oh, I need to look at this guy's profile. So I did. And I saw, yeah, that all of his stuff was like, he wants hookups, no attachment, no relationships, like just hookups, just hookups. So I'm like, oh. So then, like, we were in the middle of a conversation, and I'm like, well, I've been, like, having fun talking to him, so let me just ask. So then I, like, messaged, and I was like, oh, like, what are you looking for on here? This man tells me that he is looking for a woman that is waiting till marriage. And I was like, oh, like, haha. He's like, I'm not joking. I'm not looking for a whore. Your whole fucking profile is you saying you just want hookups, but you're trying to look for a girl that is waiting till marriage. Kill yourself. This shit pissed me off so bad. Oh my God, I can't even like go into detail on how angry this makes me, because what the actual fuck is wrong with you? You're an actual fucking man whore, disgusting, nasty, dirty, hungry, unemployed, and then you're like wanting to find a girl who is trying to like save herself for marriage so you can take that from her, because you have no fucking interest in dating. You even said it yourself. You said it yourself. Disgusting. And then you have the audacity to slut shame women. I don't want a whore. You are one. Okay, this next one, per usual, we're in the middle of a conversation like, oh, how was your day? Like, what are you up to? What are your hobbies? Stuff like that. And then just in the middle of me answering one of his questions, he just says, okay, so are we getting freaky or what? We barely even made it through hi, hello, how are you? And you're already being a freaking horn dog. Get the fuck out of my fucking face, you fucking little bitch. Get a fucking fleshlight or something. I'm trying to tell you about my day and like tell you about my hobbies because you asked, and then you fucking, so are we gonna get freaky or what? I'm tired. I'm exhausted after talking to these people. Okay, this is probably gonna be the last one because I'm running out of time and makeup. But this guy, again, I have on my profile that I don't like facial hair. Most guys crash out over this. I've literally gotten thousands of messages of guys genuinely getting angry at me over the fact that I said I prefer guys without facial hair. And this one guy, like, comments on it and is like, oh, like, why not? Like, that's all he said, which I'm like, okay, I'll have this discussion because, like I said, usually guys are, like, genuinely angry about it. So I'm like, okay. A guy with a beard is asking me why I don't like facial hair. Calmly, let's talk about it. So then I just like told him my use, you know, like, oh, I just don't find it very attractive, and also it can literally give you like acne and infections. I'm not down for that. He's like, oh yeah, like fair enough, that all makes sense. And then he was like, I would shave my mustache for you, or my beard or whatever. And I'm like, oh wow, like I feel so honored. And then he said, so does this mean we have the green light? And I was like, the green light to what? Like go out on a date? And he said, no, smash. And I was literally like, bitch, no. And he's like, why not? I said, I'm not interested in that. Like, my whole profile says I'm not interested in that. Like, I'm not trying to just fuck. And then he said, really? What's your body count? Unmatched. Why are you like this? Why are you like this? Why do you act like this? Genuinely, like, it actually just pisses me off. Like, I get angry thinking about some of the interactions I've had with men, because I'm like, you don't see me as a person. You don't respect me. You're a little bitch. I hate you. It's actually so frustrating and like makes me lose hope in freaking humanity. Bye.
Let's look at some creepy Reddit photos. I've done a few of these videos already, and usually the pictures that I show creep me out a little bit, but it's pretty rare that they actually leave me feeling unsettled. That's exactly what these photos did for me. This is a photo of a local music group gathering in my hometown. They were in an upstairs room in a well-known pub that has been here for well over 100 years. I know this room very well and I'm familiar with all of the furniture. None of the furniture has the shape that appears in this photo. There appears to be a dark shadow standing behind everyone, almost like it's posing for the photo with them. This is a photo taken some time ago, I believe around 2020. I was working at a castle courtyard in a cafe as a barista. Usually, me and my colleagues were the last ones in the area, so we had to lock everything up. At the end of the shift, I stayed at the cafe to close and clean everything up, and my coworker went around the castle to close and lock all the doors. After some time, she called out for me from one of the upper parts of the castle since she wanted me to take a photo of her standing on the balcony. I took a photo of her, we finished closing everything up, and then we left for the day. But later when we checked the photo, we noticed that something was there as well. My friend is the one on the right, standing inside the red circle. But on her left, there's a shadow, and I have no idea what it is. Usually I try to think rationally, but this photo makes no sense.
Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
A lot of you guys were inquiring if I had visited the Scary Lucy statue. And yes, I have. And I couldn't even take pictures of it because I was so floored with what I saw. This is not my picture. I had to grab this from the internet. Hey, I'm a kitten, you're a kitten, all right. So yes, there is a statue of Lucille Ball, but it's called the Scary Lucy. Or it's even called the Walking Dead Lucy in Celeron, New York. And honestly, they're not wrong. The thing looks less like Lucille Ball and more like something that would chase you through a haunted house at 2 a.m. Okay, so the original statue was unveiled in 2009 and was supposed to capture Lucy during one of her most famous episode, and that was the Mita Vegemin episode of I Love Lucy. And unfortunately, instead of America's favorite redhead, we got what can only be described as sleep paralysis Lucy. And the backlash got so intense that the town eventually commissioned an entirely new statue that was unveiled in 2016. And let's be real, it looks like 1,000 times better. Now, this was worth a picture. This was my picture that I took last summer when I went to go visit her grave and museum, and this beautiful work of art. And actually, the new sculpture really does resemble Lucille Ball and captures her charm and, of course, her elegance. But here's the thing. Hear me out on this one. You know, there are two sides to Lucille Ball, and maybe the scary statue accidentally captured a side of Lucy that most people didn't know, because while television gave us the lovable, goofy Lucy and Ricardo, the real Lucille Ball was a powerhouse. She was a ball buster, but she was a brilliant businesswoman, perfectionist, and one of the first women to run a major television studio. But by many accounts, when Lucy was happy, she was wonderful, but when she was angry, you wanted to be nowhere near her. So she demanded excellence and expected, of course, professionalism and didn't tolerate nonsense. So maybe Scary Lucy wasn't completely wrong, and let's just say, you know, hypothetically, maybe that statue wasn't depicting Lucy after a little too much Mita Vegemin. Maybe it was depicting Lucy after somebody showed up late to set. Who knows? You know, in the comments if you visited her statues and her museum, and always remember to say haunted and weird.
I think growing up, we all had that one friend that had that really bad taste in men. Talking to taste in men that literally makes you very concerned about them and what might happen to them. So I'm going to tell you a story about my friend named Ashley growing up and how she almost got herself in a serious bad situation. She never really had the best taste in men, okay? She would end up with bruises, she would end up mentally scarred, like a lot of us have dealt with, right? I specifically remember telling her, like, dude, if you don't get away from this guy, something really bad is going to happen to you. Like a lot of them do, they just kept running back, she just kept going back to him, and I was waiting for the day that I was gonna get that phone call about her, until one day she actually called me, hysterical. I'm thinking that something happened to her, I'm thinking he did something to her, so I just hung up the phone and I got in my car and I drove so fast to her house. Comes running outside before I even pulled up in the driveway, and she's got her head in her hands, she's screaming, she's crying, and I'm asking her, what's wrong? Like, what did he do to you? This girl looks at me and goes, it's not what he did to me, it's what he did to somebody else. So I sit her down and I try to get her to tell me what happened, and apparently it was way worse than I thought. Apparently her and this guy had had a date the night before, and something came up with her family member where she couldn't go see him. Luckily, I've always said God works in mysterious ways, and I genuinely do believe that God saved her from what happened to this other girl. Turns out she called me over because she needed to talk to me about how he was literally arrested for not only SA, but attempt of murder. This is something that he did to another girl when she said, I can't go on a date with you, I have an emergency with my family. And he ended up was being unfaithful to her and did this to another girl. And this took place down in the Everglades. Apparently he took this girl out into the Everglades on this cute little romantic date, and she came running out of the woods in the middle of the night screaming for the police. Apparently he lured her into the middle of the Everglades after telling her it was supposed to be a date, and apparently this girl was saying, stop, we're going too far, and then he decided to pull that move and he tried to SA her and schmurder her. What I'm trying to say is, y'all, is if you have a bad gut feeling around somebody that one of your friends brings around, tell them and get them away from them, because your gut is never wrong. If you've had any crazy experiences like this with somebody you know or anything like that, put it down in the comments. I'd love to read them, and follow for more crazy stories of my life and apparently some of my friends.
Tell everyone that you heard it from me. Watch this video. Watch this video. But let me tell you something first. I want that to come from the bottom of my heart. The reason why I do not see this world the same anymore, it's because that I actually opened my eyes. Very simple. I simply opened my eyes to understand the truth that is presented in front of me. And these truths are actually hidden from what? Entertainment. It's right there in front of your face. Go watch this video right there. And it explains exactly why our food do not taste the same anymore. Watch.
This is the production base for the famous Tasty Burgers. First, the raw materials are coated with a special marinade, then sealed in vacuum bags and frozen for storage. Once they are fully marinated, they are sent onto the conveyor belt and processed through a meat grinder, turning into perfectly shaped burger patties. These patties are then sent to the restaurant kitchen, where they become the customer's favorite delicious burgers. Because of that, the restaurant is always packed with people. But soon, the supply of raw materials starts running low. To keep the restaurant going, the owner sets his sights on illegal immigrants.
Everything is so expensive
the governor
now, right?
and orders these people to be deported.
Especially
there
me.
are already many illegal immigrants in the city, and
There you
once
go.
the order is issued, chaos quickly follows. They are all gathered and locked inside a huge cage, waiting for the next arrangement. After who knows how many days, the government finally announces that unless these immigrants agree to volunteer at a nursing home,
That's
they
the
will
plan.
face endless detention
If you're an immigrant
or even
right now,
deportation. But
that's
they
the
have
plan.
no idea that this so-called volunteer work is actually a scam. The real purpose is to use them as a reserve supply of raw materials. On Jack's first day at the nursing home, he meets a strange woman. The woman warns him that he must leave immediately. But before she can say anything more, the staff forcibly injects her with a sedative. They tell Jack that she needs treatment, then immediately take her away. Confused, Jack comes back the next day, hoping to find the woman and get some answers. But when he finally sees her again, the woman tells him a shocking secret.
I'm telling y'all, man. I'm telling y'all.